Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, that is, and today is the 22nd day of January 2021. And what I want to talk to you about is the illegitimacy of all governments, all of them, every single one of them. Those that are called democracies, those that are called republics, those that what I would call communist states, dictatorships, kings and queens, monarchies are all illegitimate. They're not real. And what I mean by they're not real, because they're not based upon natural law. And when they're not based upon natural law, this creates all kinds of chaos in our society, you see, because it was never meant this way, you see. Now, what do I mean by that? No man rules over another man. No man. Doesn't matter who he is, has no power to do this or legitimacy to do this. We've been told that simply is that pieces of paper, such as a constitution in many countries, are legitimate because they were passed by a group of men. Well, the problem with the group of men was that they were illegitimate. They have no right to rule over you at all. Doesn't matter if they're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever. You see, and when I say this simply is this different what most people would even regard or understand, because it doesn't fit in their paradigm. Most people just simply accept it as it is and say we have government because we would have chaos. Really? Well, what do we have now, folks? Look around you. Look everywhere around you, and we have chaos because the government is involved. They are the chaos, you see. They are the chaos. They're the ones that create chaos. They're the ones that create the poor. They're the ones that create the rich, you see. They create phony laws that basically are on a piece of paper, not something that is actually from nature, that is from natural law. Every bit of it is phony. It's a pipe dream. And so we have been educated, you see, just enough to be good slaves, just good enough to pay our taxes, just good enough to do what they tell us to do. And yet we have many people today, especially in my country here in the United States, that are getting poorer and poorer. They're not living well. They are suffering. And it's not just here, it's in all countries of the world. And so what is going on here is that we have men in power who are making phony laws. That is, they're making laws that actually cause harm. You see, natural law doesn't cause harm, folks. Any law that is created by what I call these illegitimate people, especially lawyers who create laws to make us criminals, when in reality they are the criminals. They are the criminals. They're the ones who seek to do injustice to all people. They create their own phony laws on a piece of paper, and we believe them. We believe them. And so the steps you have to take simply is that this. They have no power unless you give them power. They have no power if you don't vote, because they don't have legitimacy there, you see. You see, when you vote and cast your ballot, You're saying that the system works when reality simply is it doesn't work. It only benefits only the few who continue to rule over you because you're in some type of spell, the spell of simply government. And so with this, there has to be some type of balance, isn't there? When those that do this kind of thing, these criminal acts that they do to people, that they lie to you, they lie to you, they lie to you. They don't tell the truth. They cannot be legitimate. You see, they're criminals, all of them. All Republicans and all Democrats are all criminals. Until you realize that and understand that, the scales of your eyes will never fall off because you simply believe that you have to have government because simply as you believe that you're in the law of the jungle. That's what they tell you. Or they tell you they have to have the rule of law. In other words, they have to have this enormous pressure that is the power of the state to actually come in and to destroy you, to kill you, in fact, or throw you in jail. When reality simply is they're illegitimate. And when you don't put any power, you don't put any energy behind them, then they will. Then people will see that they're phonies, and they are. Most of them are actors. They act, and you believe them because they're on a stage, because television, the media, is a part of this. They wouldn't get away with as much as they do in some ways because of the media, because the media doesn't tell you but half-truths. Well, half-truths are not truths, are they? They're lies. When someone says their product is pure, it needs to be 100% pure. If it's not, then it is not pure. You know, the famous advertisement, I think it was Ivory soap back in the 60s or 70s. They would say there was 99.44 pure. So it wasn't completely all 100% pure itself, if it was true. So here's the deal. Those of you who are supporting this system, either by being in the military, by you being in some type of form of government work that actually does harm to others, then you are going to be judged. Not by me, but by karma. Because you can't do this. You cannot do this. You cannot do this, what you're doing. Because there's no balance here, folks. It's nothing but chaos. There's nothing but fear by those who seek to rule over people. They threaten you with the sword, so to speak. And so you coward, because you don't know who you are. Until you understand who you are, then they continue to rule. It's up to you. It's up to you, because simply is if you continue to believe in their system and hold on to it, whatever way you do, then it will still stay there. It will still stay in power. And so you have to grow up and have some courage to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to be a part of this. It's interesting. I read an article yesterday hearing about the protesters in Portland, I think it was, or Seattle. What they protested, that basically these people are I don't know what they are, to be honest with you, but they have nothing else to do. They don't have any jobs. They've been completely brainwashed. Most of them are rich, young kids. Most of them are. Almost all of them are. Most poor people are trying to survive in a system, and these people out here are paid operatives. They're paid to do what they do to destroy things. So they already do damage to other people. So may karma come to them and what they're doing because they're not legitimate. They do harm. So they were protesting simply is that now simply is they're not happy neither. So what? Biden's in, you know. So they're the other extreme. They're gone to the other extreme, completely the other extreme as far as I see. And I see them as somewhat of an anarchist. That is simply is that they're going to get violent more and more. And they're going to try to hold people or threaten people or whatever you want to call it. You see, nothing changes, folks. It never has. Because everybody tends to revolt. You know, it's just revolting, revolution. And it doesn't change. It just doesn't change anything. People are still in bondage. And in fact, usually it gets worse. Because we don't obey natural law. We don't see that there's a law here for all mankind that is actually would be heaven on earth. In reality, simply is there's so many people with traumas, anger, all these things that are also causing issues because simply they hold on to that trauma. And I'm kind of sidestep here. I didn't want to do this. I just kind of wanted to share. But this is what's happening. Nothing changes. Everybody revolts. So let's say, for example, here in America, the American Revolution, did it really do what it was supposed to do? No, it did not. I believe it was concocted to fool people to break away from Britain. They'd already been fooled that they had to have some type of form of government to rule over them. And Jesus said it very clear, do unto others if you would have them do unto you. So obviously, if what we hear from what Jesus says, and I'm not saying he's some God or something of that nature, because that's what most people think he is, but he's not. I just think he had what I would call understanding of what the world was, what world we live in. You see, he understood the whole dimension that we live in and how people don't love one another. They choose to hate one another and hurt others for a dollar to take something from somebody else. It also, with their rules, that is, their phony laws, makes all of us criminals. All of us are criminals in their eyes. You see, they cause people to steal and to rob others. Many people who have nothing tend to rob either to get food or whatever type of thing. And they're thrown in jail, for a $10 or $20 item. So when you look at things as written on a piece of paper, when it's written on a piece of paper, that's part of the trick. Because our ancestors a long time ago didn't write anything on paper. It's a trick. You see, our ancestors had the knowledge, and those who came to different foreign lands like the explorers chose to explore the country that they were in and to basically destroy what the people knew, the older people, either just usually a medicine man or a witch doctor, so to speak, knew these things. And once they were disposed of, and the older people, then they came in and gave them books and paper and to re-educate them. They've been doing that for centuries, folks. They still do it. We go into Africa such and say we're going to re-educate these people. We even use the word re-educate them. The scenario that's taking place in Africa in the last 20, 25 years has been really radical as can be. And what I mean by that, well, the people who used to live on the land have been fooled, just like the Americans were, to go to the cities, to get employment, to work in industry or work in any type of way of getting paid money. And so there are very few people who live in rural Africa now, except the very, very, very poor. I can remember in 1980 reading some information from Africa, especially the poorest African countries at that time. Some of them were making no more than $200 or $300 a year, and according to the US dollar figures, or this World Almanac per se. But we deduced that thinking based upon that money as though they live valueless lives. But in reality, maybe they didn't live a valueless life. Maybe they lived away from the system. They didn't want to be a part of the system, because that's what the legal system is. It's a system that entangles you like a spider does in a web and keeps you there because you believe it's legitimate, not knowing who you are and what type of person you are. You see, this is not going to end because you're going to have to stand some way. And when I mean stand, no, you don't go out and quote unquote march in the streets. That doesn't work, folks. Never has, never will. You don't beg the government for freedom because you're on your knees and begging for something of that nature to happen. It doesn't work that way because they know that. You're a slave. You beg, you see. You don't beg, folks, because you have the legitimate right to be free. You have the legal right to be in natural law. You have the right to be in peace. And these con artists, lawyers, they're the lowest almost down there with the religious people, the preachers that teach a phony law there that God's going to judge you. Just the same thing that the government does. The government's going to judge you too. So people live in fear. So if you live in fear, then you're in chaos. You're divided. If you're divided, you don't know who you are. And that's what they want. See, you don't know who you are. We haven't come that far, folks. We have not, we've got all this knowledge, such and such a place, supposedly, and it hasn't done us any good because simply we refuse to see who we are. Few of us are actually moral women and men who see through this and are actually begging you to wake up or be aware of what's going on instead of people fighting the system. We got to get so-and-so in the office. He'll change everything. Really? I've been on this planet for 60 years, folks. Government doesn't change anything for the better. It's always worse. They'll come in and offer you something good, but in reality, simply is they tax you for it. And so in reality is you're punished many ways. The lowest of the low, I think, simply is a guy who works in the government, gets elected because guess what? He gets elected because he has $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 million given to him to get elected. So it's a popularity contest. It's a joke. People vote because of the snippets, the little small snippets that he says, which are most of the time aren't true, or she, same way. Politicians can be women and men. I remember encountering someone, talking to them. This is probably probably 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little longer. And this is how fool people are. This is just a little step. And this lady told me simply is that, the only people that are legitimate to be government officials or to be in government offices, that is senators and congressmen, are lawyers. And I looked at her and I said, really? Then where the hell is, look at the mess we have now. She didn't say any more then. This is the stupidity of people, that they believe in the legitimacy of government as though it was given to us and it's a good thing. And the reality simply is they use it to rob us of our energy, of our lives. And see, energy is our lives, you see. And then there's the people who simply is compromising, simply is you're already seeing it. You're going to see it unless people really become aware of what's going on. They're going to take the money. See, the government's going to come along and say, hey, we'll provide such and such amount of money per month per you can live off of. Well, there's a lie. The money ain't going to be is not going to be worth anything. So if they, just for example, let's say they give you $1,000 a month. Can people live off of $1,000? Yeah, some people can. There's some people who can live off $1,000 a month. That means simply is that only those who have a house and don't have any payments on it and have either one or two people in their house. So in other words, there can't be, children and that. Because money, is only can go so far. And with the government, the way it's doing now, printing the money, that is the Federal Reserve System, another system, is quote unquote printing money like it's making it more and more and more. It's making more and more of it, which means simply eventually it will be hyperinflation. All fiat currencies have done this before. All countries have done this, trying to quote unquote. It's failed every damn time, folks. Every damn time. It won't work. It's for them, quote unquote, a way to pay their bills because the government owes money. And so they pay off those government, other people, which eventually they won't take the dollar because it is worthless. Because it doesn't have any value anymore in it. It's the way of the banana republics. It's the way of the Zimbabwe. It's the case simply of Zimbabwe and what took place there. Read it. Look at what Robert Mugabe did to that country. He totally destroyed that country. Totally destroyed it. And you know what's really sad? He never got punished for anything he did. There was no criminal court came after him, nothing. He ruled for 20 to 25 years, I think it is, in Zimbabwe and made it a hellhole for those people there. Destroyed it for himself. And that's what I'm saying. It doesn't make any sense because it doesn't work. Because someone comes along who simply is, I'm going to take from the people. I'm going to take whatever they got. That's why governments don't work, because they steal from their own people. They're not benefiting them. They're not helping the people. These people are sick because they choose to steal from their own people. They choose to do what I call harm their own people. Yes, Robert Mugabe did this to his own people. Same way that's taking place in South Africa. Same thing. And I think the other thing is the people get caught up in this left-right paradigm. It just blows me away. People want to argue simply is that, oh, these things, bad things happened in the past, so we have to somehow solve the problem. You know what? Like reparations, it doesn't work. All you're doing is sowing seeds of discord from the next generation, you stupid idiots. So I'm going to go out here and say, like, what happened during the Civil War, and I'm going to reparate these people. I'm going to give them money such and such, but I'm going to punish other people. That's not fairness. I didn't live in that time period. I didn't do any injustice to those people. Do you see how devilish these ideas are? And people say, well, they deserve it, such and such. Really? They're not even sometimes true ancestors of these people. They're the quote unquote brothers and sisters from many years before. It's over 150 years ago, folks. Get over it. We're living in the now. We're living in the present. We're not living in the past. And that's what people forget. And all you do when you do that, you spoil the people more. It's foolishness. It doesn't work. That's what I try to explain my deal with the South Africa and what took place there and what's transformed with the hate there. Because it happened over 150 to 200 years ago. So we're gonna pay and punish the other people when they had nothing to do with it? Who the hell are you? Did someone make you God or something? So you can punish people? But that seems legitimate because we've been so brainwashed and believe all these people were hurt so bad. Well, sure they were hurt. But that's not, you can't do anything about the past, folks. We're living in the present. We're living here in the now. And the now simply is we've got people who simply continue to believe in government. And it's going down the tubes, folks. It's going to happen. It has to fall. And it's not legitimate neither. Unless it's based upon natural law, none of it. That's why man fails every time. Because he chooses to do something he thinks is right or legitimate, he thinks, in reality simply is, and within 100 years or so, in fact, within most republics, the history is simply within 200 years, those countries are pretty much gone. You know why? Because people get lazy and they get spoiled. They forget. That's why people perish. Because they don't have any knowledge. They don't understand. They don't understand simply is that there's no legitimacy for government at all. It's only your belief in it that keeps them in power. And they love it, you see. They can do whatever they want to do. And the more, quote unquote, immoral you are, in other words, you don't see right and wrong, you have no problem with it. Because you are in the same suit that they're in. That's what they want. They want you to be immoral. They want you to be do whatever you can do to harm others. Because you know what? You're becoming just like them. Do you want to be like them? Because you're going to reap karma in what you did to your fellow man. You do this to your fellow human being. You see, I try to explain this. I don't see any animals that does this type of thing, that does harm to its own. And yet, people argue, you see, well, it's legitimate. It's the law. Really? Like slavery. Well, it's the law. Really? But it's not right. It's morally wrong. You have no power to, quote unquote, rule over another. You don't, you see. So the South in itself was doing immoral things too. But the North wasn't any better neither, because they were doing it too. Behind the kitchen over here, behind the such and such, there were slaves up north. Don't let anybody fool you, folks. Well, I'm going to stop it here, I think. It's approximately 30 minutes here, and I wanted to share this. But my point here is that unless you come to the understanding that this is what they argue now, this whole thing of what happened in the election, such and such. Who cares? Who really cares? Because the point simply is, folks, is this. When are you going to realize, when are you going to stop putting your energy in that? Because in reality, simply is when you do that, you're right in the same canoe that they are in. Because you're following the same thing. You're following that, you believe in it. You believe that simply is this okay to steal from others, because that's what it is. You can plunder others and punish others. The story of the South was simply, as most people don't know this, is after before the war between the states, the South was the richest part of the country. After the war, the South was the poorest part of the country. It was done to punish the South. I'm not saying it's right what the South did, but I am saying simply is the South was punished for their own father's sins, and yet they didn't have anything to do with it. Or, you see, and others out here are wanting socialism. Good luck with that, folks, because we've had that since Woodrow Wilson. It's been over 100 years in a form of gradualism as it's taking place, and then under Roosevelt, and then eventually more of that came into play with Lyndon Johnson, the Great Society, when it was a joke. It was the worst thing that could happen, but it happened anyway. And it's just continuing to go downhill. It's just getting worse and worse. So this is a wake-up call for you to understand simply is that government is not legitimate, because they make laws that make criminals of us. And if they do that, they're doing harm to us, and they're not legitimate, because simply is natural law can't tolerate it. You can no longer tolerate someone who does something that does harm to others, especially to the innocents. Okay. Well, I appreciate you being with me. Hope that others will seek this out and write me some questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.